To our honorable governor and our lieutenant governor, thank you so much for supporting this effort, for supporting our little office to really execute your vision from 6.5 years ago. That is to promote civil military engagement, government of Guam, and civil and military community engagement. And Cliff is right. We've never done it in a vacuum. It's way too large for 7 people. And on some fronts, we actually lack expertise. And so I would be remiss if I did not thank some of our partners who made it possible today with the Office of the Governor, Guam Economic Development Authority, the University of Guam, our consultants, Tetra Tech, who are in the room, and of course, Cliff and Monica, who have been working with me for about 2.5 months when we were given the okay to move forward. And I have to say, in that 2.5 months, I've gotten sick twice because the agenda kept shifting. But there was never a time where we did not get support from the Indo-Pacific Command. So I really want to thank them and all of you for supporting the first Guam Defense Forum. And so for those who are less familiar with our journey, in 2007, the Guam Build-Up Office was created to manage civil military planning for the Marine realignment. In 2019, after much deliberation and recognizing how Guam's role was again moving to the forefront of regional security, we met with leadership, and it was then that we decided the office had to shift its role and had to open its doors to communicating and working with the other branches of the military that reflect Guam's reality, not just today, but from 8 decades. And so recognizing that we have been home to sailors, Marines, airmen, soldiers, the National Guard, and the civilians who stand alongside them, we knew this was the right thing to do. Again, from day one of this administration, we committed to a whole of government and whole of community approach. It's been difficult, as I have said, with 7 people to address a phone call for a veteran who may not have been able to get on base with an ID card, or base access to private land, or even easement issues and opportunities. But I can say with much confidence and pride that our office and the people who work there, former Senator George Bamba, if you're in the room, my senior policy analyst, Albert Santos, over 40 years as an engineer, doing a lot of infrastructure work in partnership with DOD and with our government entities. My chief planner with a lot of land background, John Birch, and of course my admin folks, Siandra and Nikki, who keep us compliant with all of the federal money that we receive to assist our community. And so, again, I believe I missed, and our planner, Jose Napati. So when I just want to give a little history. When we proposed this agenda and this forum, the leadership challenged us to demystify Guam's role in regional security by bringing together the Indo-Pacific Command and local commands, our industry, our community partners, to highlight both progress already underway and the hard problems we still must solve today. This agenda reflects that charge. Some panels will share solutions already in place, and others will walk through the issues that are complex and still evolving. Together, though, you will see civil-military affairs in action, transparent, collaborative, and community-centered. It is my sincere hope that this will be one of many more Guam Defense Forums to come. And again, Governor and Lieutenant Governor, thank you so much for convening this. Before I close, I just wanted to provide a personal reflection. And as I said, overseeing this office and working on so many complex issues and opportunities, I have a personal reflection. Every now and then, I will talk to my family members, my mother, but I do want to share that I am a daughter of a 20-year Navy veteran. I'm the wife of a 20-year Marine Corps veteran, a mother to an Air Force and Army veteran, and a grandmother to an Air Force veteran. Each has blessed me with lessons and wisdom, and together we span in our family at least 4 major conflicts of war. And so, above all though, for me, I am a proud Chamorro. I am a daughter of Guam, and I carry the words of my mother as an 85-year-old World War II survivor and a lifelong public servant. And I am going to try, because half the time she speaks to me in Chamorro, and I understand it very well. Saying it is a different story. So as you can imagine, I asked her to first say it in Chamorro, and then please translate it into English. So in Chamorro, holy cow, thank God this is not live. Para inilalata dani proteccionta gini gitanot taguan. Necesita esti iparata fandanya zatapanguentus, zanesti sia imilitat. Munga na para tabira hit tati giedzana tempo anaitisinya hit in defendiham. Itautauta and itanota. Maila zata na siguro na maulik STE tapapa na mona para iminaulik itautauta and itanota guan. Sa todo i tempo in sasangan na para taprotehi zata fandependi ihinengi ikutura ilengwahi ihanam zanitanut samoro. Lona seguro na ta defendi itautauta. And so in English, for our freedom and our protection of our home Guam, we must come together and dialogue with the military. Let us not relive history during those dark days when we could not defend ourselves, but rather let us be sure that from this moment forward in our dialogue, it is truly for the betterment of Guam and our island Guam. We say almost every day that we would defend our beliefs, our culture, our language, our skies, our water, but we too must defend our people from the threats beyond our shores. Sijus Maasi, thank you very much. Thank you so much for being here.
Can you highlight the recent lessons, alignment on priorities for readiness and resilience, and identify areas where community and mission needs intersect? Where have you been? What are we doing now moving forward?
Gosh, I have to say that mission and community intersect at almost every level, because when you think about a military base, it's no different from a community. There are families that live in there. There are kids that go to school. There are hospitals. There are clinics. They need the same things that we need: food, water, shelter. And so it intersects at every level. And so the discussions that we have through, whether it's CMCC, Civil Military Coordinating Council, or just through meetings that we have with DOD on many issues, it really is a reflection that we are almost inseparable. We need each other for many of the things that we rely on. I think that the quality of life issue is a big issue for the DOD, and it is for us on Guam. As the governor has mentioned, our housing issues, power, water, it really is the same. And so I think that's a reflection of how we intersect at every level of civil military engagement.
That's great. Carla, do you have a comment?
What I would say, the intersect that I work at is with the military, the government of Guam, and the greater region, specifically Micronesia. The governor chose me to be a regional advisor in part because for 30 years I have run the Azuda Foundation. It's a nonprofit organization that responds to the humanitarian needs of Micronesia, struggling hospitals and school systems. And that intersect hits everybody. I consider every military ship or plane almost as an opportunity to load them up whenever they're going out into the region. And so I think I fall under the area of soft diplomacy. I'm trying to put a lens on DOD, and I don't want them to think of themselves, and I don't want us to just think of themselves as military might. I think of them as being able to deliver humanitarian cargo with all the training and that they're going to be doing throughout the region. So I want to load them up. So I think that one of the things that I would want to impart to the officials here is, and this is what I have found helps them to understand, is if you think of the outer islands of Micronesia as forts on the American frontier, then you will know how to deal with them. You resupply forts, you pay attention to them, and when they depopulate, what happens is lawlessness will occur. So if these islands depopulate, you can imagine that a country such as China that's doing a lot of illegal fishing in the region could put 30 fishermen on that island. They could put all kinds of nefarious activities on that island because it's been depopulated. So I work in that area. And to just give you an idea, it's so unscripted. It depends on whatever commander at that moment has a heart for it. I've had captains at Naval Hospital that'll call me up and say, Carlotta, if you send 2 trucks here right now, we're going to give you 80 boxes of saline solution with a year left on it, but don't say a word to anybody. And then the next captain of the Naval Hospital I'll call up and they'll say, whoa, we don't do it that way. You got to go here, here, here. So it all depends. So I think there needs to be a standard operating policy in place. I think the Denton Act needs to be fixed. Right now, you could not move medicine in the Air Force Christmas drop because you're prevented. If an island got hit with salt water that came in and took out their taro fields, a Coast Guard ship could not take salt water resistant taro bulbs because of these restrictions. Another restriction that I think needs to be lifted is I think the admiral should have control or a say in what's in a FEMA warehouse. So if they want to respond to a drought in one of the islands that the Coast Guard is going to, I think the admiral should be able to go to 800 pallets of water in a FEMA warehouse and cut loose 10 to go out on a Coast Guard ship. So that's the intersect that I'm on. And I think the way that it also benefits Guam is when islanders are able to stay in their islands and continue their wonderful way of life in those outer islands, they don't become refugees, climate change refugees, and come to Guam. So that's the intersect that I work on.
Thank you very much, Carlotta, for that. I want to jump over to the mayor. Sir, you guys are all the front lines when it comes to issues, typhoons, COVID. You guys are right up there with the people. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, I think the conversation is that the Mayor's Council has to have this relationship that intersects with the communities. This is where we have congressional delegations. The mayors have to be a part of those congressional delegations.
Right.
Because what affects the island will affect individual municipalities. There's 19 of us, and of the 19, one of us is affected. And so no longer are we in those days where the mayor is just the bush cutter, right? We are tangible. We're important to our residents. We see them first, they see us first. And so that relationship, it has to intersect because it's not. And that's where this conversation, I'm very grateful to Governor Liu. Vera has been to the Mayor's Council several times. And that conversation that we have now, there's a funding source that we're receiving from Old CC, which is the beginning of that intersection, that relationship. And I think we need to continue that partnership. Carlotta talks about FEMA warehouse. Yeah, we all know too well how we did not connect and how that intersection is necessary, because we're now working on community distribution, points of distribution. And so how does that affect the 19 villages? How does that affect DoD families? Well, it connects our resources, or it allows us to have every resident, including DoD families, access these resources immediately after a storm. So storm preparedness on our end with the community points of distribution are super important. We just had, with Mayor Wayne Santos in Chalampago, had his ribbon cutting for the emergency shelter. So those tier 2 shelters need to be reconsidered at the community level, because certainly we have, and then the Lieutenant Governor is very instrumental in assisting, I believe it's 5 other villages with their tier 2 shelters after a storm. So for all of you who don't know, right during the storm, the Department of Education is tier 1. When that clears out, the mayor's office, or at the municipal level, we're tier 2. So everyone transitions into that tier 2 shelter. But that tier 2 shelter needs to be managed better. We don't have the resources to operate the tier 2 shelters. So for Mayor Wayne, I feel sorry for him. I'm happy that he has a facility, but when he actually has to use it, who is going to man that, right? So that conversation certainly has to continue to happen, and that intersection, because that's what we're working.
But it is happening now.
It's happening now, but it's necessary that an elevated amount of discussion occurs.
Okay, and we'll get back to that and how we can elevate that discussion. Tay, you're out there, you're the business community, you're affected just as anyone else, and you have a lot of, stake in this as well.
Sure.
Your community.
Yes.
Please.
Thank you. Looking back at some of the coordination that is needed for improvement here on Guam, Guam's recent challenges show clearly that our community and military mission are tied together. When one is vulnerable, both are at risk. We need to take a one Guam approach to solve some of our challenges. Some examples that I prepared. I actually.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So it took me some time, but
keep it short though, because we have other voices.
I'll keep it as short as possible. So,
Thank you.
So during Typhoon Mawar, of course, there were some major damages to water, power, and infrastructure. There were some delays in mobilizing quickly because of the coordination gaps between DoD, FEMA, Guam. I guess the lesson we need to learn from this is, we need to have a institutionalized joint playbook for disaster response, not something ad hoc, at the moment. There are other items that there were some challenges, especially major challenges when it comes to H-2B workforce. There's been years of visa denials. It stalled both military and civilian projects, as everyone is aware of. And until GovGuam and also our Department of Defense obviously align and put their opinions together and put their efforts together. It was at that point when we were able to really get some of the momentum moving on a lot of these labor approvals. So that's something that is a great success story of how the Department of Defense and the civilian can mobilize and coordinate to get certain goals reached. So there's quite a bit of others, but I think I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank
yeah.
you. Thank you.
So, thank you.
So, Randy, you're sitting at the center. But, you know, your thoughts on this, because I know that over the years, over the decades, there's been a lot of work that's gone into let's pull together, let's have joint task force and things like that. And there's a lot of lessons learned recently because, you know, every typhoon comes at a different time and you're in a different place at that time. And so it just kind of highlights where some of our vulnerabilities are. What's your sense in this collaborative effort? Is it there? Is it could it be improved? What's your thoughts? Microphone. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Cliff. So I'll build a little bit off of what Vera and Carlotta have said. So really, Guam is a very small island, and we have our military installations.
Definitely.
You can't drive 20 miles in any direction and not come to a military installation. So we really are one community.
Yes.
And that means that we intersect in many different ways everyday life. But in light of the investment and development of military resources to meet the challenges that are out there, there maybe are half a dozen areas that are priorities where we need to pay attention, and they've been mentioned earlier by the governor. So I'll pick on three of them. One is sustainable, resilient power, electrical power. It meets everybody's needs, both the civilian community and the Department of Defense. We've seen, maybe not so recently, that housing and the challenges with either availability or the affordability of housing and DOD's effect on housing locally is an area of intersection and priority. And maybe transportation, traffic, shipping, airlines, how we move about and how we interact with the region. In my job, I am a planner and a facilitator as much as I am an advisor to the regional commands to facilitate primarily the Civil Military Coordination Council, which is a venue where we can bring the governor and the executive branch into executive working meetings and just be open and pass information, but also to monitor the effects of what we're doing to execute the buildup. And I want to mention that it's not just because we have partners from the CNMI here, as well as from the freely associated states. So those are quarterly meetings where we roll our sleeves up and meet with the governor and her team. But we also meet about 4 times a year in a stakeholders meeting with the governor of the CNMI, Governor Apatang. And then in the freely associated states, I help to facilitate something called the Joint Committee Meeting, which is something that's required under the compacts to be able to handle and manage security and defense for our neighbors in the other parts of Micronesia. I'm always looking for ways to take the conversation from what we engage in with heads of state or governors down to the community level. So I'll always be open to suggestion. I've had long conversations with Carlotta about her ideas to maybe expand and add flexibility to DOD and its assets to bring resources for humanitarian purposes to many of the islands in Micronesia. And of course, work very closely with Vera. So again, I think housing recent housing, power, and transportation, maybe, and I would be remiss not to say healthcare. We certainly have challenges in healthcare. So in a way, I'm all ears. I'm open to suggestions from our partners in the community, both industry and even others in the Department of Defense. How can we reach the most people at all levels of our community because we are really very small and very interconnected.
Great. Anybody have any comments to what Randy shared, or any one of you have shared? Open mic, it's all good. Are you feeling that love?
So I covered it.
Well, I think definitely, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about housing and
Yes.
how the impact of the, of the buildup has affected some of our housing concerns here. But it seems like there seems to be a lot more coordination with the local officials to not only alleviate some of the local concerns when it comes to housing and the pressures that the military buildup can put on housing, but also to try to relieve some of that by talking to the community, by putting out requests for information and trying to find the best solution for that not only benefits our residents here and also obviously military personnel, but try to find that, that balance. And I think that approach has been very successful in my opinion. I know there's been a recent RFP put out for housing, and I'm hoping that the community can partake in that, and hopefully, our local developers have something to offer that could benefit, our military counterparts, but also our local residents here.
Yes. Mr. Mayor.
I appreciate that, but coming from a different angle as well. When we take a look at our local population, our communities, our villages, I think one of the things that we've learned, one of the gaps I think we've recognized is our vulnerable population.
Yes.
Right? And so as we continue to grow, we're still going to have our persons with disabilities that need to be addressed.
Yes.
We're still going to have our manamko that need to be assisted. And by coincidence, the Mayor's Council oversees the Senior Center Operations Program. So can we improve those programs so that they're also resilient and that they're ready? We have a drug problem, right? That's a big gap. So how do we're going to continue to build, we're going to continue to defend, right, this nation, but we talk about defending our people, and our people are dying. So how do we get more interaction so that we can resolve those gaps or fill those gaps? I think on the community level, those are very important for us, because how do you have a thriving community with no people, right? So I think we continue to work on it. We have programs throughout the villages with child development. We have several villages that have after-school programs and other grant programs. So that's great, but I think we have a great University of Guam and GCC. How can we partner with all of them in the villages so that not only are our people educated, but they're also armed with resources? And our DoD families live in our communities these days, right?
Yeah.
I'll use PD as an example. Nimitz Hill, a large percentage of Nimitz Hill are renters from on the DoD side. So how do we filter that through the communities so that we can fill those gaps? I think that's just my...
Well, I think it's safe to say that the military community and the civil community all want the same thing. We want safe villages, neighbors to live in, and we do want to take care of our manamko. We do want to take care of certain things that are difficult, but we do need to get through infrastructure without, to pull people in our community. I think that's where the intersection starts working for us when we start looking at that. But any more than GovGuam can have all the answers for the military, can the military have all the answers for GovGuam? So it's got to be worked together. I'm sorry, any comments, any additional thoughts on this?
I mean, to add on to that, our resources are limited on the Mayor's Council side.
Okay.
And how do when we're looking for funding and we're looking for resources, I always say, as the president, I never say, give us the money. And I've said it again. I've always said it, because typically it's difficult for us to spend. But if you give us the tools, if we can mirror what's working in other states, if we can mirror what's working in other municipalities, and we can bring it to Guam to help us strengthen our communities, then I think the majority of our council membership would subscribe to something like that. I just want to be clear that it's not always about money.
No.
Right?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, there are some great examples of where that worked in dealing with federal agencies. And, DED has a specific mission, as you heard from Admiral Paparo. And so it's kind of a whole of government to include the federal government, right? Carlotta, thoughts on that? Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, not exactly on thoughts of that. I mean, we're just trying to pick and choose up here. There's so many different
okay.
topics
It's your call.
that we could talk about. And so the one that I would also like to talk about is Jay Merrill was here just a few minutes
Yes.
ago, and he was talking about workforce development. And what I would say to the business industry here is that there are 10 countries in the Pacific that qualify for the H-2B program. It's Fiji, Papua New Guinea, Solomons, Kiribati, Nauru. It would make such a difference in their lives if they were recruited to come up and to work in these islands. And I think it would also be part of the soft diplomacy that I'm a big fan of. The thought of getting a work crew from the Solomons working on Marine Corps base, and the picture of that going out there and what that would say to the greater Pacific as well as to our adversaries out there, the kind of opportunities. I'm looking for the opportunities that this buildup can create. And the other thing that I would want to say while the industry is here right now is that whenever I'm in Micronesia, I'll run across a business, say I see a business called Yap Bookkeeping, and I'm thinking, how can Yap Bookkeeping benefit from this? And then I think a company on Guam Bookkeeping might be overwhelmed, but if they partner with Yap Bookkeeping to do payroll for some of these businesses here, Yap controls minimum wage, they control immigration. They could bring in the type of people that could help bolster. So I don't ever hear that kind of synergy of what does it mean to have control over immigration and wage control, and there's such needs here. One of the things I heard is that there's a great need to rewind engines. I'm not sure what that's all about, but a shop on Guam that can't handle the rewinding of engines, they could go and do that in Chuuk, or they could do that in Yap. And the lower cost of immigration and wage control might make the difference so that their transportation costs won't cripple this endeavor. Right. So that's what I come back to. My answers and the way I look at everything is, as I said, the governor's regional advisor. I'm deeply rooted in the region and trying to make the opportunities afforded by this buildup stretch out into the region a little further. And there was somebody that came up from Fiji, an ambassador, and he went to the Guam Contractors Association. They were very excited. If you know about the worker programs they have in the Pacific, they will be waiting in line for days to get a job to go pick fruit in New Zealand or Australia. So the type of opportunities that are available here, I think would go a great way towards strengthening democracies in the Pacific, and also giving this wonderful opportunities for the workers. And I like the interaction of islanders coming in and interacting with us too.
You always have.
Yes.
Definitely. Any other comments on that? Anybody else want to comment on that?
I support, well, she's identifying a gap and an opportunity. So from the Department of Defense standpoint, we work directly with contractors, and then they source the labor. I think there should be a conversation along the lines of what Carlotta is mentioning, between for construction labor especially, maybe for some other things, where contractors look to these non-traditional sources of labor that are actually not very far away. They're part of our community, or they're in the South Pacific. Everybody knows that most of our construction labor pretty much comes from the Philippines.
Right.
That's not very far away either. It's like 3.5 hours away. And there are a lot of benefits that H-2B workers from the Philippines bring, and we've had a long history with them. But certainly, I think there should be a conversation along the lines
Thank
that
you, Randy.
Carlotta has mentioned.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. What's your thoughts on that, Tay? Do you have any thoughts relative to that?
Yeah, I mean, right now we have as I mentioned earlier, there was a time when all H-2Bs were denied. We're in a position right now where we've been getting a lot more H-2Bs. But I think the real question we need to ask is, does Guam really need a permanent solution to this? Don't forget that H-2B is a temporary solution,
Certainly,
right?
yes.
Is a temporary need of a labor force right now, especially with the buildup going on. But if you look at also the community, I mean, you look at anything outside the military bases, folks are having trouble finding contractors. I mean, there's a lot of things that they would love to get repaired, but there's a shortage going on even with that huge influx. Now, with all the military buildup that's going on, and once that's completed, there's still going to be a need. We need healthcare. Healthcare employees. We need service industry employees, right? And the fact is that the H-2B is limited to very temporary, mostly in construction need. I think it's time that we explore something that could be a little bit more permanent, a little bit more wide in terms of industry instead of just the construction industry. Maybe we need to start looking at even the healthcare industry. We need to look at the service industry. I know that this is something that has been talked about within especially the private sector, in the tourism economy and the healthcare economy. And so there was a time when Saipan had their CW programs, right? So maybe it's time Guam explore that also. Right? So I kind of like to put that out there. Yeah.
Yes, Randy.
Yeah, so Cliff, I'd like to maybe just by way of a little bit of an update. So within the CMCC, we have various working groups. One of them is a labor working group. And I would like to say that in the coming month or 2 months, that working group is going to sit down and look at a more permanent sort of visa category that would be for Guam. We would look probably to construction first, but you bring up a very good point for healthcare workers. Just by way of example, Guam's H-2B worker population, that resource, it taps out somewhere at between 2,000 and 4,000 workers. We don't seem to be able to recruit people into that industry organically. So, and we are always going to want to grow. We always need, something to drive economic development from a labor perspective. It does signal that there is a permanent need. There's a sustained need for certain skill sets. And so I wanted to just mention that we're actually going to sit down with the Department of Labor, Joint Region Marianas, and we're going to begin to brainstorm how we can approach Congress with an idea to solve this on a more long-term basis. Something to look forward to.
And don't get me wrong, the opportunities are really good for also the local employment. I mean, if our local employees can get involved in some of these opportunities, that's better for them, right? But at the same time, the fact is that there is a shortage, right? Especially with all the military personnel moving here, we're gonna need the service industry workers. We're going to need folks that are going to be able to support the mission and on a sustained basis, right? Instead of on a temporary basis. So definitely, we get the word out, try to employ most of our local folks first, but then if there's a need, I think we need to have a permanent solution to this.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Are you all willing to take on a question or two? We have a little time for a question or two. Audience, there's some microphones up there. Any comments or questions you would like to ask our panelists? Oh, here you go. Please, sir. State your name, your affiliation. Please keep your context very short and brief. And drive right to the question so we can get as many questions in. Okay, thank you.
No problem. My name is Senator Will Parkinson. I'm a member of the 38th Guam Legislature. And one of the things I want to ask is about community readiness, civilian readiness. I know that there's talk about the military potentially funding a new hospital because they recognize the necessity for having a mass casualty center in case of an attack of some sort. So I was wondering if that federal partnership extends beyond a mass casualty center to things like air raid shelters and food and medicine caches, or are those something that we as a local government gotta provide for? And then the other question is, as somebody who has a say on where these critical assets are being put, you know, there's some merit to the idea that it makes sense to consolidate and make these things more efficient, you know, put all of our industries in one location. However, we are in the front line of what potentially could be a new world war. Would it make more sense for us to spread out our critical assets, or should we go with business as usual and keep consolidating them? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any comments?
I want to address the first question regarding, community plans for whether it's emergency operations. And so to the mayor's point earlier, we recognize in many of our discussions, even with the CMCC and other partners, that we needed to again, look at a whole of government, a whole of community. And so in about a month or two, we will be engaging with the Mayor's Council of Guam through a grant that the Office of the Governor applied for, and we were successful in being awarded. And that would look at each community, their vulnerabilities and the opportunities, from really a very broad sweep, from emergency response to even economic development. And so we again took a kind of whole of government, whole of community approach, working directly with each mayor through the council, and something that, at least in the history of the CDLO, had never been done. And so, to your point, we recognize that the voices of the mayors are very critical. That's where people live, and looking at their vulnerabilities, but also their opportunities, I believe is very critical in addressing what you just alluded to. So I pass it off to anyone else that.
Well, we have time for at least one more question. If you can keep the context as tight as possible and get right to the question, we appreciate it very much so we can get the answers that you want. Please state your name and affiliation.
My name is Barbara, also go by Bobby Beneventi from Dedido. I'm a retired GovGuam employee and currently doing some farming. As I listen to the comments you are making around readiness and resilience and the workforce development, getting people and resources in place to meet the needs and demands of the military buildup and other needs of the growing population in Guam. I'm wondering if we could pause and think about what we need to do to bring education of elementary, middle, high school students up to the forefront, because to get them ready for work, we've got to educate them well. We cannot continue to place school settings and school infrastructure for a later date. My granddaughter, like many other high school children who go to JFK, have to get up and leave the house at 5:30 to be ready to start their first class in school for the day. And so those are some of my thoughts. Okay, workforce development, right on. What about educating our children now in the best way possible? Why are we still, and I'm just gonna think out loud with you, is Why are we still having separate school systems, Department of Defense and then the local community, private sector? Why aren't we bringing our children together to really enhance the newcomer student population to Guam with the local community off base, or invite us on base, whatever. But when you bring the resources that are available to really enhance the learning opportunities and successes of our children, that is where we start. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further comment on that?
I'm a big fan of reintegrating DODEA back into the Department of Education. I think that we both lose. I think that what the students in the DODEA system can bring, the energy, the new ideas, and the funding that they can bring into the Department of Education, I think is invaluable. I was raised here when the schools, it was just one school system, and there's this website and kids that graduated from Guam, military kids, and so many of them say this was the best time of their life. And they talk about what it was like going to the ranch and dealing with families and going to the novenas. And so I think they lose out when they're not mixing with us. So I'm a big fan of reintegration of DODEA and DOE.
Yes, Randy.
Yes, Cliff. So I would echo Carlotta. Myself and a couple of colleagues at Joint Region, we're local hires, right? So born and raised in Guam. I went to school with kids from Anderson Air Force Base at Jigo Elementary. It was a great system. I mean, so there's a history to why DODEA exists. I think without delving into that in any detail, I think what we need to do is, just as the governor said earlier, let's look forward. And so there's an idea that's sort of bubbling up in the minds of some of my colleagues. Why it's not going to happen overnight that we do reintegration, right? So it's going to take rolling up our sleeves and working on a way forward, a way to do that reintegration. One of the ideas that comes up is to set up a sort of a pilot school or a pilot program where we kind of reintroduce the Department of Education, Guam Department of Education with DODEA. We try to harmonize standards, facilities, and everything that goes into educating our children and eventually building a workforce, and run that pilot so that we can, in a way, get to know each other again and learn to have a unified school system. I think that is, at the end of the day, good for Guam and good for DOD because we are one community. I don't think we should be parsing out parts of our community. That's really not the direction to go in. I think we need to turn and look for ways to be even more integrated and have more ways to reap benefits from each other and learn culture and all of the good stuff that comes with that.
Hey, great. Thank you very much.